What's up, everybody? How you doing? Welcome back to the Punk Rock Review Podcast. This week, Rob and I are going to hang out and talk about Pennywise, dude. We're going to talk the top 5 Pennywise albums. Now, this is a subjective list. This is his list and my list, respectively. This isn't necessarily the list. Your list could be a little different. And if your list is different, let us know in the comments. I mean, we definitely want to know where you guys are landing on this topic. Please like the video, comment, subscribe to the channel. If you don't like what we're doing at the end of the day, you can always unsubscribe, unlike. You can even give us a thumbs down if you really want to. So yeah, what's up, Rob? How's your day going?
Oh, it's actually been a really horrible day, so I'm really glad to talk about Pennywise. It actually kind of fits the
dude. That sucks, bro. What?
Yeah, and nothing very bad has happened, just the normal
okay,
shittiness of life.
Just a meh day.
Like, I'm happy to do this because I've had like the meh day, and Pennywise has been a good soundtrack to all of it.
Boy,
and so it's kind of a good bad day music, honestly.
I'll tell you, man, I've been listening to them nonstop for about 5 days, probably. Like, not necessarily the same day we stopped talking last week, but like the next day, like that Thursday, I started just really getting into their music. I kind of forgot how good they were. I think that Pennywise is kind of an underrated band, and I will. Let's start right there.
Okay.
Is Pennywise an underrated band, first and foremost?
It's hard to say that completely because they have a hell of a legacy. They get on these major festivals. Like they are a very accomplished and established band, but I think even by people like us, they might be slightly underrated because I feel like we always sort of talk about them. There's like the front line of the Rancids and the NoFXs and the Bad Religions and all these Green Days, all of them that we talk about. Then there's like the second wing, but at the same time, Pennywise is very much a peer of those bands and on par with those bands. They're just slightly less famous, I would say, than those bands, more so than like underrated musically. And I think, it's just the way I think they were less celebrities back in the heyday, even though they're probably just as big of celebrities now, honestly, because they're pretty vocal and visual now. But back then, I think they were a little more nondescript compared to, like, again, Tim Armstrong and Fat Mike, who kind of look like rock stars in their own way versus the dude who kind of dresses like you and I with the flat brim cap and the long shorts and stuff.
We're going to touch on that in here in a little while. But so on the flip side of that coin, so my answer to that was I kind of think that they are a little underrated. When I see shirts out there, I don't ever see Pennywise shirts. Now, granted, I am in Texas. If I was on the West Coast, I might probably see a lot more. But the reason I asked if you thought they were underrated is because I also, on the same coin, other side, dude, are they the best skate punk band of all time?
So this whole weekend, I started on Friday through my journey, and I'm just seeing skateboarding every time I'm lit. Like, I'm thinking of skateboarding. Like, I think of, I have such a, and they're like, when you think of skate punk, we talked about Bad Religion last week. We talk about NoFX. So a lot of the bands we talk about, basically all except for folk punk, have been skate punk, but they are like definitionally skate punk. Their music goes with skating better than any of those. And it doesn't hurt that they're active skaters, but culturally too, they look like skate punk. Like if skate punk is supposed to look like something, I think Pennywise is what it's supposed to look like.
I kept coming back to that. Like, I wrote it down at the very, very top of my thing. It says top 5 Pennywise albums. And there's like a space. And then I started writing notes. In between the notes and that headliner, I wrote, "Is Pennywise the best skate punk band of all time? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Oh, wow, they probably are." And I was like, dude, like, I couldn't believe how I never really thought about that. I will say that, respectively, I also think that Authority Zero is a very, very skate punk type band, in my opinion. But they don't have the legacy Pennywise has. They've got a lot of great albums. They've got like 4 really great albums. But man, Pennywise has like 13 albums and I had a hard time picking a top 5. So yeah, I do think Pennywise deserves their flowers. I think that they are the best skate punk of all time. They are, like you said, the quintessential skate punk band. When you think skate punk and you visualize it, you see Jim up there leaning over on his microphone with his Dickies on and his flat brim hat, Vans on. Yeah, man.
I think of Hot Weather too. It's like, I think of Hot Weather, Half Pipe. Like, that's just, there's a certain summer vibe, but like there's this drink, because we're going to mention Sublime. There's like the Sublime summer vibe where we're all like having a beard, kicking back. And then there's like the Pennywise, like sweaty balls summer vibe that you get off of Pennywise.
Yeah. I think Pennywise is a really good amalgamation of like Suicidal Tendencies, Sublime, and like,
I thought a lot of Suicidal Tendencies this weekend. There was a lot of like, and I think a lot of it's visually, but they even sound, especially some of that early stuff, when he doesn't really know how to sing yet, he kind of just talks the way the early Suicidal Tendencies would.
I like the vocals. We'll get more into that too after this next question. But yeah, I got a lot of Suicidal and a lot of Sum 41 when I was listening to, depending on what era you're listening to.
I also got this morning is a band we've talked about is like, people don't really realize how much Blink-182 was specifically influenced by Pennywise. Like they took him out on tour several times. Like they were very much, they were like the little brothers to Pennywise in a lot of ways. Yeah. Like then Pennywise was, they would screw with them a lot because they were like, oh, but they were very much like their caretakers on the road because they're a few years older and stuff. And I was listening to some, I forget what it was this morning. I was hearing, I was like, damn, that sounds a lot like Blink. And you start to realize too, Blink, the base of Blink really is this sort of skate punk because they're from that Southern California era. Now they went into other things like Pennywise never, it's almost like if you strip Blink down just to like its punk rock elements, it's basically Pennywise with a deeper voice.
I agree with that. I could totally see that. Mm-hmm. I think that they deserve a lot more credit and a lot more recognition than they get. Yeah, dude, really great band, and I'm happy to be talking about them. So last thing that I'll ask you before we get into my top five, we're going to do my top five first, and then we're going to do Rob's, and then next week he'll probably be first again. We have a good flip-flop, what would you call that? We have a good back and forth going with that. All or Nothing was their 10th record. It was 4 years after Reason to Believe. It came out in 2022, I think. 2012. Reason to Believe was 2008. Good grief. How do you feel about All or Nothing? It was the longest gap in between albums until now. Their first album without Jim Lindberg, which we've covered his vocals already. I mean, he's a pretty iconic vocalist, and it's the only record with Zoli singing, and it sounds good. But in all honesty, it sounded more like Rise Against to me than it did Pennywise. What is your opinion on that record?
So it's funny because I'm in a few different like skate punk and Pennywise like fan groups like on Facebook and stuff. And people always bring up this record as like their underrated gem or as like their actual best record and this and that. And I'd only listened to it a few times because I'll be honest, at the time when it came out, I remember, Jim's not in Pennywise, and I wasn't listening to a lot of punk at the time. I was like, well, probably not going to check it out. At that point, it's a little bit different. Like punk, you have multiple vocalists on punk, but it's a little bit different when it's Keith and Henry Rollins and Ron Reyes in Black Flag in the early 80s in the course of a 3-year period. Whereas that 20 years with Jim as the lead singer, it was kind of hard to adjust to someone new. I will say it's a very good album, but it's like, I looked at that, I was like, oh, this is like an album I would put out if I started a skate punk band that tried to sound like Pennywise. To me, that's how it was. And that's not really dogging it. Like, they could tour, they could do all that stuff on that kind of music. It was perfectly acceptable, punk rock, skate punk. To me, it just wasn't Pennywise. Like, so I didn't even want to consider it for my list because it was so much of a different thing that it kind of deserved its own spot. And I don't think it was as good, even though I think it's a very good album. I don't think it was as good as some of the other heavy hitters that we're going to talk about on this list.
Yeah, I brought it up because I also didn't include it on my list intentionally. I do think it sounds a little bit like Rise Against. Mm-hmm. Actually, a lot of it. And I like the record, but I don't even consider it a Pennywise record. Like, I don't even look at it. It's like another band to me. It sounds, and it's weird because Fletch and what's his name wrote this record. Like, it wasn't Zoli that wrote it. Like, I know that. I know that he didn't write much of it, or if any. But it's just so, his vocals are just the pitch is too high. The key is too different. Like, it's just not the same. He doesn't have the gritty, the stuff that Jim's got. He doesn't have the background in life that Jim's got. So it's a whole different feeling. The vibe is completely different.
It's a little too
clean. The songs sound the same. Yeah,
it's a little too clean. Like, and that's what I say. These are clearly like Pennywise songs. And normally you blame like a producer for that kind of thing, but I think it was probably just a whole different sound to fill because you have different singer, a major element. It's not like Jim is one of these singers that just came in and cut vocals either. You know what I mean? He's a very active member of the band too.
Yeah, it's just something I wanted to bring up for a minute and talk about. I think that Pennywise is one of the more consistent bands out there, and that was a weird blip in their lifetime, and I just thought it was something that we needed to touch on.
And for background information, guy, and background for this whole episode, go watch The Other F Word. It's on YouTube. It's basically the Jim Lindberg documentary. But it chronicles the end of that little section, what basically ends with him not being in Pennywise anymore. Like, that's where that's the culmination of that doc. And obviously, they like always, like, there's money to be made if you get back together, and it happens, or it could be legitimate too. I'm not saying that they didn't want to get back together, but there's
probably a combination.
Yeah, no different than Blink is doing now, right? There's financial motivation, and then there's like wanting to do it.
Yep, that's how I feel about it. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because I didn't include that at all, and I didn't even have I didn't feel bad. I didn't want to. I thought, I hope Rob doesn't, and I thought, he's not that big of a poking the bear. Like, you're not a troll. So
I was going to mention, you brought it here, so I won't. I was just going to mention it because I felt like it's unique enough to sort of shine a light on it because it's so unique. And a band that, quite frankly, if you want a criticism of them, they don't have a lot of unique records. And we can debate about that. But I think the difficulty of making this made this difficult to make, whereas this is the one that was like different than the other, like so clearly different than the other.
Well, here's exactly where you and I start to like have differences. Is like, you said they don't have a unique record. I said they're one of the most consistent bands that I can think of, and I think we meant the same thing.
We're saying the same thing, yeah.
I look at it as a positive, and I'm not saying you look at it as a negative necessarily, but I definitely look at it
how people who criticize Pennywise, a lot of what they say. Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's dude, I also wrote down, I can hear a lot of Suicidal in their early records. I also wrote down, visually they'll fool you. Listen to what they're saying. Pennywise is a very punk rock band. And then I said, as an example, look at the song "You Can Demand." So yeah, let's start talking with the actual list. We got a little over an hour here to do that. I should be able to knock mine out in less than half an hour, I would hope. Yeah. So let's start talking top 5 Pennywise records. Dude, I'm telling you, this list is wild because my number 5. You know what? I'll just, when we get there, we'll get there. So my number 5 record. I got to pull my phone up because the notes are actually on my phone for this one. I was sitting out, wasn't at home when I was doing this one. Number 5, 2003, From the Ashes. It almost didn't make it because it like battled between this and Straight Ahead, and I'll tell you where Straight Ahead lands later. But I was like, man, there's like 6 or 7 records that I was like, man, these are my favorite ones by Pennywise. I don't know how to knock 2 out of here, and so I ultimately had to. But my notes from the Ashes go like this. On From the Ashes, there's a song called Salvation. Bro, the drums on that track are absolutely bananas. So right off the get-go, the drumming on From the Ashes, I think, is a step above what I was used to hearing from Pennywise. Or it might have been the production even. I don't know that it was necessarily the playing, but the drums just as a whole popped to me on that record more so than the others. I even mentioned right next to that the mix on this album is great. I can hear everything so clearly, especially the bass. It's audible over the drums even, and that's really impressed me a lot. What's your retort to that?
In general, I think that's a strength of Pennywise, whether it was Jason or whether it's Randy now. Their bass playing is a very key part of the band and kind of drives the rhythm of, like, when you think of what Pennywise is, not just because one of their biggest songs is fully around bass, but that drives so much of their music. And I have this album on my list, spoiler, and I have the production noted of this album sounds so good. Yeah,
it's wild, man. But I will say this though, I could tell that this album is from the early 2000s based on some of the guitar choices and some of the hooks, things like that. Hard to articulate what I mean, but it's kind of dated, and I don't mean that in a mean way necessarily. It's a great album, but it is dated sonically. Like, I can hear things that go, oh, this is an early 2000s record. Like, there's a little bit of new metal that you could tell fell into that record a little bit. There's a little bit of like grunge stuff in some of their older records even, you know.
There's some not emo, but there's like the popular music of the time that was kind of emo. It's not like, I wouldn't say it's not an emo record, like no one would say that, but those sort of what you're talking about, like the way the guitars sound and stuff, it's not emo. They just sound like what records sounded like regardless of genre in that time period. And usually that comes down to like technology more than anything, of like what were they using to record stuff on. The same stuff that everyone else was using, you know.
Right.
That's where it goes.
I mean, that does matter. I did make a note that Punch Drunk is the only song that I don't really like much on the album. I'm not sure exactly what it is that I don't like about it. I'm just not really into that song. Rise Up, a freaking classic Pennywise track. Like, when you think Pennywise, if Rise Up comes on, if they played that live and you told somebody that this is one of their earlier songs, they couldn't argue with that, is my point. Then they have Yesterday. It sounds like Sum 41, straight up. But I always kind of thought that their later stuff, I don't know if later is the right word. Yeah, it might be later. Mid and later stuff, I thought that they always kind of had some 41-ish vocals. But yeah. And then the last note that I wrote on this record is Change My Mind is an absolute banger. And it's exactly how I feel about things, man. Like, this dude articulates things in a way that I identify with kind of crazily, to be honest with you, man. Like, I really feel like me and Jim could sit down and have a long conversation. Like, that's a bucket list guest for the podcast for me.
I mean, I don't disagree with anything you say on any of the songs or Jim's whole approach is very unique, and it's something I think we're gonna unpack as we go through this.
Yeah. I'm gonna move on to my number 4 is Unknown Road. What year did that come out?
That's 93, I want to say.
Yeah. Yeah, 93. 1993, Unknown Road. Man. Sorry, I'm trying to like take notes and read notes at the same time, and it is incredibly difficult. So, Unknown Road from 1993. Phone goes over there. I'm done with that. All right. Oh, the opening to this record is so ridiculous. Unknown Road, though, is one that had you asked me just out the gate, hey, where do you think this will land? I would have said like top 2. I really had this in my head as one of my favorite ones, bar none. But it's a really good record. It's got a consistent recording quality. Homesick one is one that stands out. It's a straight slapper. The vocals on Time to Burn, I really like. City is Burning is one of the only songs by them that I don't really like. Let's see, Dying to Know, more great vocals on that. I think his vocals stood out a lot on this record, and I would say my personal opinion is that this is his best vocal performance. Just if you took his vocals and isolated them and went, this is what he did on this, and this, I think that this might be his best vocal performance on Unknown Road.
See, I think Unknown Road will be like that one album that you and I are going to have a little bit different. Because I thought a lot higher of it going in, and I think I ended up not having a lower opinion of it, but just I felt it got crowded out by some of the other. It felt like to me the one in the 90s that kind of maybe wasn't quite where the other ones were. And the thing is about Pennywise, it's going back to that original thing though, because of their consistency, it's so hard to like say like, well, what's wrong with it? Well, nothing. It's just, you know,
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah, it's just they have such a density of these type of songs that it's gonna be. I think sometimes in the case of Pennywise, this is our most preference list. I think of a lot of the stuff we've done because we really are splitting hairs with this is better here and this is better there on a lot of this. So some stuff, finer details we hit on, but I think it's harder homework more than anything.
Yeah, and I think that I personally have a longer history than Pennywise than I do a lot of these bands. Because I've been listening to them as long as I have any other band I've been listening to. And I've got as many of their records as I've got any other band, except maybe Rancid. Like, they're up there. When I really started doing this, I think Pennywise deserves to be in my top 10 bands of all time, probably. And I never considered that. Dude, I probably like Pennywise more than I like NoFX. And that's not like a slap to the face of NoFX. NoFX, that's just a compliment to Pennywise. I like their lyrical content a lot. It's got their lyrical content resonates with me a lot. Number 3 for me is going to be About Time from 1995. Bro, this one
we're talking.
This one was. I love this record, man. It's got the Peaceful Days opening up. It opens up with that song. It's one of my favorite songs. It's got my favorite cover art for them. I just love that bright yellow and that time, the little, dynamite time bomb thing. Perfect People is a top 10 Pennywise song in my opinion. Not Far Away. That's a bit Offspring, but it came out around the same time as some big Offspring stuff. So wasn't
there's a lot of Offspring in their music. I want to say that too. That was the other band I hear when they try to do stuff that's a little less skate punky. The melodies they try to get are all, and it's all smash Offspring too. So it's clearly the stuff that like Fletcher's just hanging out with Dexter being like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. Let me do that. You know what I mean? And it might've been this song. There's several times I have like, wait, that sounds like pre-Americana Offspring. There's a lot of stuff on this. And it's usually when they didn't go in the punk direction. That was what I found kind of funny about that. When they were trying to be a little more melodic is when they sounded more.
I never heard a single song that I didn't think was a punk song, but
when elements other than the straight Pennywise formula though, they have
okay.
You know what I mean? Versus just the straight skate punk.
I definitely mentioned Offspring at least one more time in my notes somewhere. I don't know where exactly, but I do. I know that there's a lot of stuff that reminded me of the Offspring. I wanted to point out the song called Freebase. That song slaps. I really, really like that song. This record is one that affected me a lot when I was younger. And then I wrote, Pennywise is kind of like if you take the Offspring and then H2O and then you mix them up evenly. Like, I think that About Time is equal parts H2O and the Offspring. And then you could toss in some of these other bands we were talking about earlier, some Suicidal Tendencies, a little bit of Sum 41. Now, I'm not saying that they even heard these bands before. I'm saying that's what it sounds like to me. But About Time is almost a perfect album. I'll be honest, though. I almost put that at number 4 and Unknown Road above it. I can't remember the reason why I didn't, but it was very close. So I was surprised to hear you say that you didn't care so much for Unknown Road as you did About Time. But that's what these lists are for. My second to last one is 1997's Full Circle. I really like that record a lot. Let's see here. Full Circle is one that, okay, that's the one that was 6 and 5 for me. It was hovering up there at 6 and 5. And the more I listened to it, the more I realized that there's not anything. It's like it might be a perfect record. Fight Till You Die is a absolutely preposterous opening to a record.
So good live too. When they play that one live, that was so good.
Oh, I can only imagine. Date with Destiny is amazing melodic guitar, so good. Society, another top 10 Pennywise song in my opinion. I also thought that was on a different record.
I could have sworn that was on About Time.
I thought it was on Straight Ahead. Like if you just heard, let me hear it and say what record is this from? I was thinking Straight Ahead for some reason.
Well, for this list, I did not do any of my random listening. I did everything album wise because I really had to discipline myself to know what was on what.
Oh no, I went album by album, dude.
Yeah, that's what I did. I'm saying I had to though.
Yeah,
because like I really had to try to in my head, these songs were all in the wrong place from what I thought what was where. Especially
a lot of that was happening to me too. A lot of that was happening to me too. I will say though, every time we do these kind of lists, I always have to do top 5. I mean, album by album because I can't remember anything anyways. My memory is terrible. I put just banger after banger. I'm halfway through this album and I think it's jumping from 5, possibly 6, all the way up to number 2. What in the world's going on right now? And then, I know, right? Let's see. And then a song called What If, I said that's a nice variation of sound for them. I really enjoyed it. And then I put on here, don't forget to bring up the fact that they talk about addiction a lot. I never realized how much they talk about addiction until this week. That's probably why I identify with this band so much and why they would go so far up the rankings for me, because that's a personal demon I fight. And it's a battle that I deal with almost every day of my life still, even though I'm a decade out of it. It's still something that I think about. I still make decisions based on it. I don't get surgeries that I need based on the fact that I don't want opiates in my life, things like that. So those are some personal songs for me. And if somebody that is out there that hasn't dealt with that, they might hear this, still like the song, but it may not just be the personal song that it is for me. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Also, I put Bro Him Live, Yes Please. And it closes out with an Unknown Road piano version. It's really long. It's beautiful. And it's kind of hard to beat this out for a number 1 spot. But there is an album that I like better. And yeah, my favorite Pennywise record. What do you think it is?
I'm going to say, shoot, you have the debut?
No, Land of the Free.
Okay, that was
my favorite Pennywise record is Land of the Free. I can't get around it, dude. I tried. I thought, man, this one doesn't deserve it. It's not old enough.
You didn't want it to be good.
Right? I didn't want it. Well, I know it's good because that's my favorite record by them.
But yes,
it's the one I go back to.
It's so cliche.
I used to get it mixed up between that and Straight Ahead all the time. Mm-hmm. And Straight Ahead's the one that didn't make the list that I would have thought would have been way up there. Was Straight Ahead. But Land of the Free is my favorite Pennywise record. Is it cliche? I don't know. I don't keep up with that stuff, so I have no idea. Is that the cliche one?
For me. And maybe for others. Okay. Just because I think like Bro Him is their biggest song. I think it's their most enduring song. But I think their most popular song ever was probably Fuck Authority, as far as like getting into like
I guess it probably is, huh?
Getting into people's hands. And again, like I said, for me, maybe that might be generationally specific to me, because that would have been like when I found Pennywise on that record. And so to me, that was Pennywise, was the Land of the Free Pennywise forever.
Because I definitely think of older stuff as Pennywise, which is why I didn't think this would make the cut. Because I think Bro Him, whereas somebody else may think the other song. But my notes are real short on this one. It says, I can't decide which album sounds better between this one and Straight Ahead. I kind of wish that Land of the Free had the production of Straight Ahead, because that would be a perfect record just in general, not just a perfect Pennywise record. And then it says, every song throughout Set Me Free, which is like the 11th out of 14, is an absolute banger. And the last 3 songs are also really good. They're just not quite as good as the first 11. And for that reason, it has got no skips. It is a great record from the front to the back, from the top, bottom. I love that record. Land of the Free is my favorite Pennywise record, and I would definitely put it up there to say it is objectively the best Pennywise record. Yeah, that gives us a whole lot of time to talk about your list. I had a lot of fun talking about that, and I had more fun listening to the records, man. I had a lot of fun doing this one.
Yeah, so by far, I think this was the funnest research that we've done because it was equal parts rediscovery along with just flat out enjoyment. Because of what we talk about, how Pennywise isn't always discussed as much. Whereas like we can do our No Effects and Bad Religion ones, and those are fun too. But those just kind of feel almost like the day to day. Like so, it almost felt like work doing those ones because I had to actually go and listen. Where this was just me, walking around my house, bumping my fists in the air, throwing the fingers in the air, just doing all that the whole time. I will say like I've always viewed Pennywise like this. I used to kind of think they were like Bad Religion knockoffs, and not in like a condescending way. Like to me, in my brain, Pennywise was always like Bad Religion's juvenile delinquent little brother. Like they were in the same family, but like this guy went to college and this guy steals cars. Is kind of how I always had the Pennywise and Bad Religion relationship. Now looking back at it, I think they are two sides of the same exact coin. They basically good.
I wanted to respond to what you said a minute ago before we got too much further on. And I think that, I like the way you said that. I think that Pennywise, there's like you said, two sides of the same coin. I think that there's Pennywise for people that are, Bad Religion for people that are a little more political and a little more educated, maybe even. And then you have dudes like me who went through a real tough life. I had addiction problems and fighting and stuff. And I get the same kind of sound with lyrical content that is more focused on something I can relate to. And if somebody thinks that's me talking crap about either band, that's crazy. But I love, I've figured out how much I actually like Bad Religion by doing the show with you. Mm-hmm. So I'm not talking crap. I just think that Pennywise is like that kind of music for a dude like me, whereas Bad Religion might be that kind of music for a dude like you. Mm-hmm. And it's not by a giant margin. Neither of us dislike the other band. It's just the one is just a little more form-fitted for you. One's a little more form-fitted for me. And that's the way it's got to be, man. We're all different people. The musicians are different too. You can't have two Bad Religions because you don't have two exact groups of the same exact people.
Would suck. That would suck.
And it would suck.
I can't imagine another band trying to be like the college professor band. They just wouldn't pull it off.
Yeah.
So, and also on that note, I think they have the same sort of mentality, but it's a different perspective in that Bad Religion deals with the human condition and human as a whole, you, me, and everyone else, and how we as a mass populace interact with the world and the institutions. Pennywise deals with the same exact thing, but it's from an individualistic perspective. It's and I don't mean that in a selfish way. It's like, what is the effect on me? How do my actions go? So it's a lot more, I think, of a one-on-one thing, whereas it's almost a mass thing with Bad Religion. That's a very like dense, like academic way of thinking about it. But I think they're both very intellectual bands. It's not to say Pennywise is not an intellectual band either, because everything they're talking about, it's very like intellectual in nature. But like Bad Religion specifically packages their stuff as college professors playing punk rock. Whereas Pennywise is kind of talking about the same stuff, but they market it and package it to kids at skate parks. And I think kids at skate parks like both of them, but I think Pennywise is a little more of a directly into your veins. You don't have, like, I feel like with Bad Religion, you sort of have to explain why it's also punk rock, like there's no learning curve with Pennywise. It's like the band that has those songs about fighting authority. Yes, they're very deep and intellectual, but you also, if you don't want to have to do the reading, you don't have to with Pennywise, and you can.
That's what I was going to say. On that level, is their Bad Religion. When you trim the fat, you get Pennywise. They're not. Their language is a little bit easier to understand. The words they use are a little bit easier to understand, and that makes for an easier listening experience for a certain demographic of people.
Right. And now with all of that said, that none of that is to diminish the value, especially of the lyrical content of Pennywise, because I do think ultimately it is their strength is in the lyrics.
I was going to say again, upon listening to all these records this past week, the one thing that I learned the most is that I was surprised at how well the lyrics are written. I don't remember them because I have this image of Pennywise. They're partiers. Fletcher's always out there doing his thing. Jim's a very particular kind of vocalist and frontman, and he does a lot of same things that I did. And so I just had this vision of like, they're like rough around the edges, and they're like skaters and surfers and punk rock dudes. Like they're more willing to get into a fight than Bad Religion would be, and you know what I'm saying. But then like they have like they're you got to be careful. These guys are not. This is a perfect definition of don't judge a book by its cover. Not perfect definition, but perfect example. Excuse me.
Yeah, and Jim is also very highly educated. People don't really know that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Like I said, but he's more into it's not necessarily Buddhism, but it's more of like because he's actually Christianity now. And his academics it's more, but in individuality, pursuits of like personal freedom and that kind of. That's really like what he studied, and it's reflected, I think, very much. And then just like Dr. Graffin, put that into a punk rock filter, and you get these songs that we are talking about. So let me start bringing down my list. Like I say, this 5th spot was just huge. I did finally make a decision as your list was going on. I had to make my decision based off of your list because that's what I was writing down. Because I was like, how's it going to be? Because I had Full Circle, Unknown Road, self-titled, and one that's not really on the list, but kind of an honorable mention was Never Gonna Die. I really, really liked as I was going through this journey. I had not given Never Gonna Die that much of a chance, to be honest with you, because it just kind of came out in the last couple of years. So, it's kind of hard for that to always get absorbed.
Is that the one with the white and blue cover?
With the blue, yeah, it's their most recent album, the one that came out in 2018. I love that album cover. If you want to like attract me, like that's all the imagery that I definitely like. In general, I thought it was a very good album, and I felt like the thing about those late 2000s albums, I didn't think Fletcher had his teeth necessarily. I feel like they produced like the grind out of Fletcher's guitar a little bit on some of those later 2000s albums, and I think on this album it was kind of back. And Jim was back as well. Okay, yeah. But my ultimate choice ended up being Full Circle as well for the number 5 spot. That's ultimately. I also, I wouldn't say I have a negative impression of Full Circle. That's not the impression, but it's another one too that I always kind of think I like and take for granted, but I always have trouble sort of mentioning stuff off of it because obviously we know Brohim, this version of Brohim, the second. It's a second debut album in a lot of ways for the band because it's their first album without Jason. And not only was Jason big as a bass player, he was also a really big songwriter along with Jim. So this was kind of them out on their own in a lot of ways without a member who, unfortunately took his own life in between these 2 albums. And that's why you have the new version of Brohim, which is a tribute to Jason instead of the tribute to Jason's 3 Friends as the original version. I think both versions are valid and people need to not forget about the first version because Jason also wrote that. And for those guys that he made that tribute to. Any more information on the 97 version? I have like a 4-minute video on my channel. Go ahead and watch that on the 25th anniversary. I didn't do a lot of research on it. I kind of just read some articles on it. And turns out like Jason's brothers and stuff are actually singing in that chorus that is going on this one. So there's a lot, like it's a very spiritual experience. And this is the version, quite frankly, they close their shows out with. So this is one of the, that alone put like 30 points into this. And then you said that, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I get teared up here in Brohim quite frequently because I've got a lot of friends that have passed. And that's kind of song that, like, I don't see how anybody could hear that song and then not just automatically be like, okay, well, I'm a fan of that band now. Like, I don't see how you can hear that song because every kid that I knew in high school that liked any kind of heavy music liked Pennywise. Mm-hmm. So anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. That was a good point. Like, I remember the new metal guys like Pennywise. Like that's,
you know what I'm saying?
We all kind of talked about them. And then, the Brohim thing, absolutely. You go to a sporting event and every like college team has a version of Brohim that their little band plays because it's a very uniting song. Like that's what it does. But the other two that, cause you talked about a lot of this is obviously Society, which again, I could have sworn was on About Time. But maybe I got that weird people make And then the opener, Fight Till You Die, another one that I thought was maybe on an earlier album because it kind of sounds a little bit more like those early album ones. And I think it's just a perfect. Pennywise is all. It's
anthems. A great album.
All their songs are basically anthems. Like pretty much everything they write is an anthem,
right?
And like Fight Till You Die is a perfect definition of that. So I'm glad. Like normally when I have these slots that have a lot of fat, I say on them.
Okay.
I'm happy with Full Circle being there, but the debut, I really liked the debut. I thought the debut was kind of underrated. I get the debut and Unknown Road a little mixed up. So maybe that for me is why I had trouble pulling it all out.
The debut to me is a perfect, gosh, it's going to sound so disrespectful. It's a perfect throwaway record. And I don't mean that as in like, you just don't like it. I mean, like it's a perfect get in there and figure out what you're doing record. So it's a good record. But it's a debut, and a lot of debuts suck, man. They're bad. They're poorly recorded. This one, no. When that album came out, you got what you got, and then you're like, oh, I'm gonna really like this band if they can continue to get better. And lo and behold, they were already better. Like we just, you know what I'm saying? Like I don't know if I'm explaining it right, but I really like this self-titled record, but I feel like it's kind of out there on its own with the other record that has a different vocalist.
It's also the self-titled one is very busy. Like it sounds busy. And part of that is because production is not just knowing what to record, where and what sounds. It's also knowing how to play at the
Song
right
placement
times. And And like, that's sometimes you have an asshole producer to be like,
well,
no, stop drumming right there. Like, clear that up. And that debut albums usually don't have that because they are the songs that these guys have had since they were like 15,
Right. I will say that the debut album, the one thing it's got going for it is that it's one of their shorter records, man. This band puts out some long albums, man.
And it's funny because they have like that Rancid thing where none of their songs are really long except for like Bro Him and those ones, but they stuff them. Like there's nothing
they're like
left.
17 song records and stuff.
But you got, back then though, a lot of these bands we talk about were very 90s based, so you needed to move units. So you had, especially a band like this that's not going to get radio singles, you need to provide a lot of value for that. And that's I think that's part of why some of these bands did this. Now from there, the other slot that was a little iffy was my number 4 spot, but I eventually went with From the Ashes for this one, which was a little bit of a shocker to me because it was another album that I was kind of calibrated. I wouldn't say not to like, but I have always been a little colder on this. Even when we did our 2003 album reviews, remember you were a little shocked that I didn't have this on my top 5 albums of the year. And to me, it's funny because at this time I was listening to a lot of Pennywise, but like I was also kind of had my fill of Pennywise. Like I had all these records. I was listening to them. I kind of didn't need more new stuff. And it didn't really stick out to me much at the time. Going back and listening to it, this is not Land of the Free Part 2 like I thought it was. It's got a lot of Land of the Free on it where you can see like they clearly just came off of that album, but it's actually just sounds like 2003 more than anything else, which has its positives and its negatives. Exactly. Like you said, there's parts of it where I feel like it's almost trying to be a Bad Religion record. And I'm like, oh, they were kind of going for that and a little bit away from where they were going. Some that I know, the song I've listened to forever that I forgot was on this record, God Save the USA. Shout out to that song. I love that. We talked last week about all our 2004 politics. They're all in that song. They're all contained in there. Holiday in the Sun, which I have always loved. And then I think you mentioned Yesterday's, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty much I have all the same ones. They're very impressed by how listenable this album was too, like from beginning to end. More so than I don't think it has the density of great songs. I just think it was a very good album to listen to as well.
That matters. That matters a lot. Like sometimes I'll take like an album that is full of 7.5 songs if every song is a 7.5 or 8 versus one that's got a bunch of 10s and then also a bunch of 2s. Like I don't like that. That's not hard. That's not easy for me to listen to. It's a chore to get through something like that. One thing I wanted to mention is that I used to look at Straight Ahead and Land of the Free as like my peak Pennywise 2-pack. And I think that has shifted to Land of the Free and From the Ashes because I think I look at From the Ashes as an upgraded version of Straight Ahead. Because they're both, I feel like those 3 albums are all in like a very specific era.
Yeah. So like I would say From the Ashes maybe sounds more like Straight Ahead as far as from a sound than it does even Land of the Free. I think you can
I agree, which is why I feel like it kind of takes its place.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to mention that because it's an album that I don't hear mentioned a lot when people talk about Pennywise. We always see Unknown Road, Full Circle, About Time, even self-titled. You hear, saying Land of the Free. You hear that one all the time, but you don't hear much about From the Ashes. And I think that it's a fantastic record.
Yeah, and I'm responsible for that discourse of disrespected, I think, as much as everyone. So hopefully I rectified that here. Speaking of, on number 3, this is where it just got ridiculous. So these top 3, I had them in my head, and then they held up as I listened. I like when that, like, it's fun to have a new discovery, but I like knowing that your whole life wasn't a lie. That's something I always enjoy. So number 3 was Land of the Free on my list. Could have been number 1. Like you had it at number 1. There's nothing, like, again, if I made this list tomorrow, I don't think it'd be number 1 because I think my top 2 are pretty solid, but upon further listen, I gave this the least listened to this weekend because it's probably the one I've given to the most listened to over the years. So I just kind of had to because again, this was kind of my Pennywise when they came in. Again, it's got Fuck Authority, which to me is one of the signature Pennywise songs. I also think talk about time and context. This album came out June 19th, 2001. Now that is like 3 months before the world went completely insane the following September. And holy crap. So the Fuck Authority video came out before any of this stuff went down. But they've got that video And it's just George W. Bush is the ultimate avatar for authority and enemy. Like I said, they're basically making him the Reagan of the 2000s. So we talked about last week a little bit on the Bad Religion.
I mean, kind of was.
He was, and he was easy to hate the way that Reagan was. Like he was a singular figure in that same way that that makes it easy to have something to rally against. But to me, it was always so pressing. It was like, oh, this was not Iraq war based or 9/11 based or none of that. This was just general. You're the president. Fuck you. Kind of the way it should be. But I mean, not to say they don't have specific ideology, because you have songs that are like WTO, which is a pretty big shot at the previous Clinton administration as well. But you got Time Marches On, Land of the Free, Fuck Authority, My God, which is maybe my favorite song off the record, Set Me Free, and then I did like the song WTO. This is another album that just absolutely flows. For what's the length of it? 39 minutes. It's a pretty crisp 39 minutes because the songs themselves are very crisp. Pennywise always sounds urgent, and I think that's why these albums are generally listenable.
Dude, their drums are absolutely absurd.
And so think about this. They have had, with the exception of Jim leaving in 08, 09, the only lineup change they've had. Jim left twice. They had Mike Quackenbush for the Vandals with them for, this is a very mysterious period. Florida Punk Archivist on my channel, he's dying for me to do a deep dive to find out what the hell Pennywise was up to when the Vandals singer was singing for them for 3 months. I think it was like a touring situation. It is just a weird random thing. So Jim left at that point, and then Jim left in the late 2000s. Other than that, Jason passing away is the only time they've ever changed members. So they've had the same drummer this whole time. They've had 2 bass players. Fletcher has been the guitarist the entire time. We talked about it with NoFX. I don't think Pennywise really had to get tight the way NoFX did. They kind of were sort of ready-made like that. But that's why they're so good live still to this day, is because they are just so tight as a band, because they've had so little personnel changes for a band that's been around as long as they have. That's insane, that level of consistency.
You know, we were talking about how they have a sound that you say might be able to get stale or it gets a little monotonous. I look at that as an absolute positive, because I know what I'm going to get when I listen to Pennywise. Because when I listen to them, I don't listen to these songs and just listen to them on a surface level. I listen to them in layers almost, you know what I'm saying? So like when I was doing all this listening this past week, I heard all the lyrical stuff on one of my listens. I was getting all the bass lines in one of my listens. It depends on what I'm listening to it on, but I kept going back to the drums. I think that this is one of the more technical, one of the better playing punk bands ever. Because like you said, tight, that's a word that's important for a group like this. They are extremely tight. You don't hear a lot of stuff off at all. When they're live, they do play very uniform. You could almost say it sounds like it's a recording. It's wild how good these guys are as a unit, as a group of people. Their music is so technical, man. It's very, very fast. Like the songs themselves are simple.
Good luck playing them.
Yeah, but the speed they play it at and the amount of stuff they change, the drummer is so, for somebody that doesn't really use like double bass, dude, explain this guy's speed. Like it's just ridiculous. The fills are like 2 seconds of like, I don't even know how to explain it, dude. It's so crazy.
And a lot of the bands we talk about are so, we ascribe that tightness to them, where they developed it. It's because the bands that we like had to sing for their supper literally. And so they got really good at live performance, at being efficient with studio time. It's just something that bands who had more of capital influxed into them didn't have to be as good at, the way these punk bands had to do. And that's why we kind of say it, for a genre that supposedly is with bad musicians, we kind of have a whole lot of really great musicians in this genre who just play this specific style of music.
Punk rock started by being bad musicians. Punk rock is no longer a bad musician's playground. Now it can be. If you want to get out there and play sloppy, gross punk rock, I'm your guy, bro. I will love it. I love that stuff. But punk rock now isn't a sloppy genre. It is a aged, practiced genre of music now. You can't you're not going to make it if you play like crap in punk anymore.
Right. And someone made the analogy of, and I forget what punk guitarist they used, one of the great ones, and they maybe Hetson or one of those. They said Hetson can't do what Eddie Van Halen can do, and Eddie Van Halen can't do what Greg Hetson can do. And that's the way we need to think about it. That's a better way to think about it. Instead of Eddie Van Halen's good because he does this, and Hetson's not good because he does this, but it's more like, and punk's the only genre, by the way, we do this with. We don't devalue, like, again, be Matt Freeman, be Randy Bradbury, play Brohim that long, that many times, that consistently with 400 people on the stage and be able to just keep that backbeat going. Good luck with that for, literally any other performers in the world.
Man, ain't no way you could convince me that James Hetfield, Kirk Hammett, those guys could write Life Won't Wait. Ain't happening, bro.
Mm-mm.
It just ain't happening. Are they fantastic musicians? Yes. Zach Wilde can't play Pennywise songs. Sorry, he's a great guitarist, but he's not the same guy. And people really like to latch onto these.
I think, and it's funny because you get so like Iron Maiden, they'll talk a lot of shit about punk rockers, but you get like guys like Bruce Springsteen and all them, and they're like, oh no, we couldn't do that. I couldn't do. I liked the Ramones. He said I couldn't do it. Like I physically could not play at that level of speed and that.
Iron Maiden would talk crap about punk, really?
All the time, yeah, and they still do. And I think that is context though. They came up as a metal band in Europe in the late 70s when punk to them, punk isn't, I don't think, the underground, like cool subversive thing. Punk is the trendy ass thing that was probably crowding them out when they were trying to make it big in that time period.
They probably think,
and they've always kind of held on to that. Yeah. But it's funny because like you mentioned, like Metallica and all these, they all grew up on punk. So they, they are very much in it's Iron Maiden.
Well, they have a lot of respect for punk rock.
Right. And they grew up in similar scenes. As a lot of these, all the thrash is metal plus punk. That's what thrash is. That's the original concept of it, and then taken to all these different directions. What's great about Pennywise, though, one last thing, there's no ambiguity about their genre. They are punk.
Right.
You're gonna say like skate punk specifically, but punk is such a good descriptor for them. Like, what is punk? Pennywise is punk. Okay.
Yes.
So
I would agree with that, though. I think that's a good point.
Like if I was to make, and this is not an insult to them, if I were to make a generic punk song, I just mean generic, like standard punk song, it'd be a Pennywise song. That's the one band could be that.
I put Pennywise up there when I'm trying to describe punk rock. I put Pennywise up there with like, I go, man, you could have like the Pennywise type punk, or you have like the Casualties, and like those two bands are exactly what you just said. Generic sounds, but not in a bad way. They're generic because they made them so popular that they became a generic description for a particular kind of music. So yeah, I want to make sure people don't think that we're I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings out there.
Hey, every grocery I eat is generic, and I am not starving these days, so generic can be just fine.
Dude, hold on that topic, bro. I can't eat Honey Nut Cheerios anymore, dude. I have this generic kind that I eat now, and I tried to go back to regular Honey Nut Cheerios, and I can't do it. But the generic bag is like 3 pounds of cereal for like $4. But like, I can't eat Honey Nut Cheerios anymore, and that's an amazing cereal that I used to love. But it's funny.
I can't upgrade on cheese for the same reason. Like, I have to have the cheapest cheese. It's just one of those things. Okay, speaking about cheap cheese and the color of yellow. What a second.
Okay.
There. My number 2 album, which I thought might have been number 1, but no, it's number 2, was About Time.
Okay.
It's the only Pennywise I actually own on vinyl. So it leads, it's one of my leaders of like, I need to clean. I need to do this. I need to kind of get in the mood. So I go through and there's all these great albums I have. All right. About Time is usually the one that fills that slot for me. As you said, Perfect People, which I think is just a great song. I changed the lyrics. I always think it says, fuck the perfect people, fuck they all look the same, but it says something quite slightly different. But when I see Pennywise live, I put my own lyrics in it, and it is what it is.
Wait, what does it say? What does it actually say?
It's fuck the perfect people. Wait, does it say that?
I don't think it does. Continue. I'll look it up.
Okay, so they've continued their tradition of having a song with the word day in it, which they have like 70 times. They have Peaceful Day every single day. So they have 2-day songs on this one. Freebase, which you mentioned it. And then another one. I know you're not a big video guy, but one of the early Pennywise videos was the video to Same Old Story, which is just an awesome video. Everything we're talking about, it's the most cliche punk rock video of all time. So at the beginning of the video, the kid, the little skater kid, he's in the fridge and he's drinking milk out of the carton. And the refrigerator closes and his dad smacks him up the side of the head. It says, I told you not to drink milk out of the carton. And it just
That's awesome.
Typical old. So the video aesthetically looks like the Friday movies. That's kind of the vibe you just kind of get from the movie. And then the dude, the skater, just squeezes the milk in the dad's face and like runs away. And then he's at the record store and he's going through the vinyls. And he's looking, he's got like an AC/DC or something. And then he finds Black Flag Damage and he picks it up and like, vroom, it comes to him. And then the second half of the video, there's this abandoned house in like a rich part, probably the rich part of town that Pennywise was from. and the kid is just there skateboarding in the dude's pool as the end of the song is playing. And some rich guy comes out with his broom and chases him out. And then so the skater's got to run back, and he finds the garage that Pennywise is playing. And the last shot of the video is Fletcher with his big old long hair going like that, putting his guitar down, dapping up the skater kid. If you don't have any more punk rock cliches that are in that video, they are all there. You have the old angry man, the dad turning away the AC/DC, getting the Black Sabbath, or getting the Black Flag.
That sounds like my entire high school life.
When you think about like how something like that could be really resonant to like young punk rockers, like that's what Bad Religion and Rancid are on this high level over here. This dude's just pissed off at his dad and stealing records and skating. Like this is what we're talking about. Also, I want to know, I love the way the record ends with Killing Time. I love that as a closer on a record. I love, you talk about the drums. It's a lot of drums in this song. It's actually a lot of drums and Jim singing. I think it's a good way to end this record. Damn, I want to listen to it. All right. And then my number one, which shouldn't be as a surprise. This was my dark horse in my head. And then I am glad it caught up. It is Straight Ahead. To me, Straight Ahead basically is.
Wait. Straight Ahead's your number one?
Yep. Straight Ahead was my number one. That's the one I thought it would be. And it ended up being that. Yeah. To me, it's the density of songs. Victim of Reality, Might Be a Dream. Greed. I love Greed. Government Greed. All the levels of greed. My Own Country, as I said. Straight Ahead, One Voice. Alien, which is one of their kind of another song they have a video for. That's which is a really weird video.
I'm shocked right now.
I'm shocked that you're shocked by that being.
Dude, well, because like that's the reason that you put it in your number one is the exact reason that I took it off my list completely. I didn't think it had enough good songs on it.
Yeah, and I think it's got
that's wild.
Now it's got 17 songs on it, so that kind of taints it a little bit. And it's 48 minutes long. But to me, like this is sort of if Pennywise, the closest thing Pennywise had to a greatest hits was this, because to me, there's more of their greatest hits on this album. I think About Time is the other one that's maybe closest to it, but to me, it's Straight Ahead.
Dude, dude, this song doesn't have more like well-known Pennywise songs than Straight Ahead, Unknown Road, Full Circle, Land of the Free. Those all have more well-known songs than Straight Ahead.
Let's look at their stats from their live set. I actually want to test this.
Okay.
As I do,
it's a good record though. Like it was definitely like number 6 for me.
Yeah, what are we debating here?
But like I'm just saying, like number 1 is a pretty prestigious spot, so I'm a little surprised you had it at number 1. I really thought, oh man, I guess Straight Ahead didn't make his list either, and your ass is like, oh, Straight Ahead. I'm like, what are we doing here?
Okay, this is according to setlist.com. Brohim's their number 1 played song. Okay, Pennywise it's not looking good for me. Pennywise number 2, Fuck Authorities number 3. Society's number 4. Number 5 is Same Old Story. Number 6 is My Own Country. Number 7 is their cover of Stand By Me, which is really good. Perfect People number 8. Fight Till You Die number 9. And number 10 is Peaceful Days. So I got 2 out of 10 for my big thesis.
Yeah.
Oh, but then we go My Own Way, Living for Today, Rules Every Single Day. Can't Believe it, which we haven't talked about. I mean, I'm not going to apologize for Straight Ahead.
No. And you shouldn't. It's all semantics. We're just talking. It's your list and my list is my list. Because I mean, ultimately, you didn't agree with my couple of them either. So I mean, whatever. But
I think we
just was a little surprised.
Same list in a different order for the most part. I don't know if there's any. Is there any one that's like? I mean, like Straight Ahead.
Well, Unknown Road, you don't talk about in a positive light.
Yeah, and I don't dislike Unknown Road. I like all those. I think I have all the, except for the self title. I have all the other 90s records basically on my list. And that was the one I thought was just slightly not as good as those ones. I will say also, it's not an official record. Part of how I got into Pennywise was, okay, I saw the Fuck Authority stuff and I got that record. And then we talk about Walmart. Out of Walmart, I found Pennywise live at the Key Club, which basically that is the Pennywise greatest hits, but it's just in a live venue. Greatest hits before basically of the 90s, basically. It's prior to 2001, obviously, because that stuff hadn't come out. Wouldn't It Be Nice, Living for Today, Final Chapter, Can't Believe It, Unknown Road, Fight Till You Die. All those songs are recorded literally live at the Key Club one night. So it's kind of the audio experience of going to a Pennywise show on record. And there's a lot of video of this. So if you don't know much about Pennywise, that might be a decent way to sort of dip your toe into as sort of a sampler to Pennywise. Although these days you have streaming, so we can just listen to everything all at once. You don't really need these introduction. I thought that record should be mentioned. It's not an official record, but it for me personally, it was very important for me getting acquainted with a lot of this Pennywise.
That's kind of how I got into Bad Religion, is that I got a hold of All Ages. That was like my first Bad Religion record.
I was
It's
thinking
not
of
the
you
same
exactly.
thing, but it's
Yeah.
similar. It's like an amalgamation of all their
Yeah.
early stuff.
Well, it got me through it. Like the first time I saw Pennywise, the only album I owned was Live at the Key Club and Land of the Free. But I knew almost all the songs on like their Warped Tour set because most of them were on Live at the Key Club, which I felt was
Right.
cool.
And No Effects. I heard they sung live is the first No Effects I ever heard, which is kind of why I was a little surprised at my No Effects list because a lot of those songs are older.
Yeah.
And I really like that record a lot. But I think The Fuse is also a really good Pennywise record. I didn't talk about that at all. It wasn't going to crack my top 5. It never was. But I did think that it was a really good, solid effort. And that latest album you said, I have that record. I own it. It is a good record. I just don't know any of the songs off of it yet. I've only heard it about 5 times, like total. So I don't know any of the songs yet. But it is a good album, man.
They play, which is the one that they play Live While You Can. Pretty right. Like that one has survived. I mean, it's only 2018, so technically they're still promoting this album, but like that one has survived into their live set pretty regularly to the point where, and this is the case with all of because Pennywise is so consistent, like their set, you're never really aware of the era that they're playing in it because it all just kind of sounds like Pennywise. So when you're watching a Pennywise show, it really is all about the lyrics because it's not like, oh, we're gonna play. Sometimes like I've seen Rancid where they clearly played a little more ska infused set, like depending on the vibe and what's going on and how they were feeling, or how
when they play with the Interrupters, they play a lot more ska. When they play with Dropkick Murphys, they play a lot more of their older stuff. When they play with like the Bouncing Souls, they play a pretty healthy mix of all of it.
So they know their audience. Too. Yeah, they know who is more likely to be.
Isn't that amazing?
At that show, like that's smart.
Man,
like, and I'm sure a lot of bands do that, but like it has to be a band that we follow so much that, and we've also seen multiple times. Be like, I've seen them do this, do that. Pennywise live set, I've commented on, so I want to kind of close out my thoughts on them. That is my favorite thing about Pennywise, though, and I've only seen them live a couple of times.
I've seen them a few times too.
My legendary 2003 Warped Tour. I actually got Jim's autograph. At the
nice.
I still have the shirt in the other room that I eventually had to watch. But like, another way to entertain myself on an afternoon when I want to have something on in the background and I'm not going to put on my vinyl, I will put on a Pennywise live recording of something.
Nice.
And it is consistently always pretty good because, as we said, with their consistency, like to me, they're always aspirational. Like I always wish I just could be in Pennywise when you see them play. Like they look like the coolest guys in the world. They're doing it. Punk rock just seems, it's what they're doing. And then like I think even as time has gone on, like when I watch a Pennywise show and I see the people in there, they look. Yes, they're punk rockers that are hanging out like on their side stage, but it's also like just a bunch of dudes, a bunch of Hispanic dudes, a bunch of dudes like you and I. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like
it's like California, which you and I aren't from California, but like what I mean when I say that. Yeah,
it's our doppelganger hanging out there, dude. Where did my pen go? I'm sorry, I'm listening to you. I'm just losing my mind right now. All those
notes you took, I do think you lost. I am curious. Jim is doing a lot of like acoustic work right now. He's actually on tour.
Interesting.
At a few different. I've listened to it like once. It was okay, but like right at the end of the pandemic, I think because no one could get together. No, like all these old punk rockers released their acoustic albums, and I'm just now getting into them because it was like I wanted something a little more cheery at that time, and now I've been brought down to earth with everyone else that I'm kind of delving into some of this. Some of the solo stuff that Jim seems to be kind of on his own plane. He's still in Pennywise, obviously, but he's kind of on his own plane. He's written a book, Punk Rock Dad, I believe it was called.
That's awesome.
Gimmick infringement from you there. The movie, The Other F Word, really is based off, like it says, it's based off of that book, although several punk rockers are featured in it. But he also was doing something of like a sobriety event where he was the keynote speaker and just handed out an award to someone a couple of weeks ago. And he's a great follow on Instagram. Like those kids that were all tiny in that doc, they're like in college now. And it's funny, like Jim from Pennywise is greeting his daughter as she's graduating college. I'm like, yeah, Jim looks like you and I, like, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And he dresses like us and stuff. And I'm like, man, there's like a bunch of other dads in there. They have no idea how famous that dude is.
Right.
Badass, so-and-so's dad is over there in the corner. Like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, like, and I love the punk rock dad thing. Like, help kind of get me back into punk rock. Like, wait a minute, you can kind of be both. And I think, Fletcher is the ideal if you don't have kids. Like you don't have kids, you're gonna be Fletcher forever, and blah, and go for it. But like Jim is more the reality of like what from both an aesthetic standpoint, because I think I've modeled a lot. I didn't realize this. A lot of my quote fashion, to whatever extent it exists. Like I really can't dress like Fat Mike, and I ain't cool enough to dress like Tim. I'm thinking about it. Like, okay, I don't wear skate clothes, but I wear long dickies a lot. I don't wear skate shoes, but I tend to wear Converse or long socks. If I do wear a nice shirt, occasionally it's like a flannel, just because that's sort of the style. But band t-shirts. I used to always wear hats until I started going more bald, and that was kind of the reason. I was like, I basically dress like a Pennywise fan all the time. Like that's my baseline punk rock dress is the Pennywise look. It's not a skater, it's a Pennywise fan.
I look like a combination of like Tim and probably a Pennywise, because I have a bunch of patches on my hoodie that I sew on. Like I do a lot of that aesthetic, but I don't wear like the battle vests anymore. I haven't done that since I was skinny, and even then I didn't do it a lot. I've always had one. I just didn't wear it all the time. I didn't feel like I wasn't confident in it.
Yeah. I got you.
But I wear Vans pretty much exclusively. Yeah. Pennywise is a fantastic band, dude.
It's interesting too, because I think Rancid is really, and then now No Effects, not the Rancid is the only band from that scene. And I don't think they did this intentionally, but like was noted for their physical aesthetics in their time. Because, and I've heard Jim talk about this, and he wasn't mentioning Rancid specifically, but he's like, us, Bad Religion, you got to remember, we're from like the coolest place on earth. Like people barely wear clothes around here. So yes, you think of LA and fashion, but really regular LA society, we're not like, we're into surfing. We're into doing these other things. We're outside a lot. We're doing our thing. Whereas in the other scenes in London and New York, he mentioned like fashion is a much bigger part of that scene. I never thought about that.
Right.
Although I think they have created like a California punk fashion. Sort of
like
by osmosis, but I don't think they did it as an intent. I don't think they said, we're going to dress like this and this is how things are going to be. I think
I would say
who they were sort of created that aesthetic.
Suicidal probably created that aesthetic.
Yeah,
like
definitely. Everything I'm talking about, the flannel, the Old English lettering, I think comes from Suicidal. But again, all the California stuff, all the like the Hispanic culture that really got injected into punk rock, which Rancid does a lot of, and Suicidal. Yeah, that should be noted. Suicidal Tendencies was a big part of it. But it's funny because you even look
flannel
at early
and the hats and the long socks. It's all Chicano.
Early like gangster culture.
That's
not
what
tied to hip hop music. In fact, like
it's tied to like metal.
Yeah, like the early MS-13 were Slayer fans. Like that's what they were into. And I always just find that fun. And because of Suicidal,
it's weird
like,
though, isn't it?
There's a lot of the dress though, and like because a lot of people down here and where you're at as well, just kind of dress like that naturally. And we kind of share a lot of clothes, even though we're into totally different things. And I think a lot of it is that Suicidal Tendencies and the California connection. Like hip hop guys and punk rockers both like cool cars, and they like the same type of cool cars. And I think it's that California influence.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely I mean I don't really know how else to respond to that. I pretty much agree with everything you're saying.
And I think Pennywise is such a quintessential California, because even like we talked about Bad Religion. Well, one of their main members is from Wisconsin, and that's what makes Bad Religion very much Bad Religion. Pennywise Pennywise, like they could be like the punk rock version of Red Hot Chili Peppers, where they could just have like a California themed album, which they kind of do. Most of their songs are very California. Now Pennywise, like Jim, from a level of affluence himself, but grew up kind of cross-eyed, kind of awkward, had some like learning disabilities, that kind of stuff going on. But he took a job, and they talk about it in the doc, took a job next to the church so he could be close to Black Flag. So he kind of put himself kind of like No Effects, I would say, and kind of like Bad Religion, where they're from a little more affluent part of town than like the more hardcore dingy punk was from. But they were more intrigued by it and sort of went and sought it out.
I think that's where skate punk kind of comes from, is that it wasn't from the inner city. It's from the suburbs where people were skateboarding. The inner city stuff, there was plenty of skateboarding going on in the inner city too. I'm not saying there wasn't, but that particular like subgenre and sound and motif all come from Orange County, that kind of stuff. That's a suburb, dude. Like that all is down here in Houston. We have that exact same neighborhood, dude, all over the place. People dress the same. They listen to the same music, and that's where stuff like Blink-182 comes from. It's a derivative of stuff like Pennywise, which is like midway between the Suicidal guys. Then you got the Blink guys in the suburbs. Right in the middle, on the out on the coast, you got bands like Pennywise and Sublime and Authority Zero, who I bring up a lot more than I ever thought I would on a channel like this. Like that's definitely that's part of it. Is my point. It's the culture. There's different brands of the same culture. You've got, because I've come from like two parts of it. I'm definitely not like an inner city kid, but I got just as much like street punk, crust punk in me as I do pop punk. And you can tell by the way I look all the time, because you can't really gauge what I'm doing. You're like, it's just my own little brand of style. Like I got my own style. It's like kind of crusty but not smelling bad. I don't like that. I like to be clean, and it's like I like the patches. I like the aesthetic of it. I put the work in myself. I'm very DIY, but I also like to drive a nice car and have you know what I'm saying. So like, it's probably age too though. And when I was in my 20s, I definitely cared way less about all that stuff and more about how I looked.
Well, it's funny, but that's to me why like I think the skate punk is perfect like that for me. Like that's why it appeals to me. It's always the zone that I found most relatable. Because I've always been too slick to hang out with like the true. Like I'm cool with a lot of those people, but like I'm not staying at your squat. Sorry, like I'm just never in that category. At the same time, put me around like the target demo sort of algorithm generated Blink fan, and they think like I'm gonna steal their car. So that's why I've always thought that like the Pennywise NoFX lane was kind of where I reside. And that though took me years to come to peace with though. That took me to being an adult and not caring about anything that's really, oh no, like I never felt really accepted by either group. And I was like, oh yeah, no, the lane where you exist is this lane.
Dude, even now I have a merch company. I've got a record store. I do YouTube and I have a small label, and I still don't feel like I'm cool enough or accepted in my own groups of friends. It's really, really weird. I think we all have insecurities though, all of us.
It's part of what attracts us to punk rock though, I think, is that
100%
that sort of insecurity.
I have a super random question that I wanted to get out before we stop. And this is because something we talked about like 10, 15 minutes ago, and I don't even remember exactly what sparked it now. But I have a question.
Sure.
This is a good one for like a little short clip, I think. If you could have any band tour right now that is no longer a band, and not because somebody's passed on, but that are all alive and doing things, but you could get a band that you want to see one more time, or that you didn't get to see and you want to watch them play one time, what band would that be? If you could bring one band back to tour and do a worldwide tour and everybody got a chance to see them, my answer is probably going to be really lame after you tell me yours, but I have a band that I want so bad. Tell me yours.
I have the cliche one, that our shared cliche one, but I don't know if we're going to have that one as the one.
I don't even know which one you're talking about yet.
Okay, just say yours.
I want Lars and the Bastards to play another tour so bad and do another album so bad. Like so bad, dude. That is one, in my opinion, that is one of the bands that was the greatest for the shortest amount of time. And it's probably good, because who knows what would have happened if we had 2 or 3 more albums by them. But what we got was so good that I'm like, I want them back so bad. Or maybe like old Distillers, but the Distillers sucked when they stopped playing, in my opinion. But the Bastards, they had 2 records, and they were both quite different, but they were very good, man. And I saw them play twice, once with Dropkick Murphys, which is one of the best shows I've ever been to. And I can't remember who the other show was with, but that's a band that I think of often. Like, man, if I could just get to see them one more time live, they were so good. Anyways, what would your answer be?
So the cliche answer, but you and I both said we don't actually want this, is the Op Ivy answer. Like that's the one that,
I didn't even think about that,
we've also said we don't actually want it, but if it's there, you and I are both there.
Duh.
But like, that's why I said that's the cliche one. But and you went really off the board. You picked another member of the same band, side project, or other band.
True.
And that's exactly where I was like, you know what? I don't think of because I don't think of the Rancid side projects as inactive, because they are still around.
Right.
And those bands weren't necessarily like real bands in that, like, yes, they toured and stuff, but they were always the side project bands. So I just want to see all of them. That's exactly so sorry for the lack of diversity on this answer, but I want to see the Transplants play like a full out deal. I want them to record another album.
I only saw them once, and it was very short too.
Yeah, I only saw them on a Warped Tour. That's the only time I ever saw them, which is probably like the worst place to see. They're still good, but probably the worst place to see the Transplants.
Yeah, they need to be inside.
I'm trying to think of who else is like broken up.
I have a diverse answer.
Who's sitting there?
But one of the members died, but he wasn't an original member anyway, so I don't really know how this qualifies. But I would pay a lot of money to see One Man Army play. I saw them once. Again, one of the best shows I ever saw in my life. My top 3 shows, that's them right there. Rancid in 1996, because it changed my entire life. Lars and the Bastards with Dropkick Murphys at Fitzgerald's, because Lars played 2 sets. He played with Dropkick and the Bastards because their guitar player had a broken hand. And One Man Army and the Necromantics at Fitzgerald's downstairs, which is like a tiny little club. It's like the size of an apartment. It's a little bitty place. Again, a show that changed my life. I felt when I saw him up there playing. Speaking of Jack from One Man Army, I saw the essence of cool. He was cool, man. He had his guitar real low. He played it real well. He sang real well. He was a good-looking dude that just had like the cool hair. He had a great I was jealous, dude. Like he looked cool. His body had the right, like, I don't know. He was shaped like a cool dude. Like when you get a girl and you go, hey, what kind of dude are you attracted to? They go, that guy. It's like an Elvis. It's like that kind of look.
Mm-hmm.
He had
literally
that
too. He sort of had that Elvis vibe too. Yeah.
He had swag going on, bro. And like One Man Army, like that is a top 3 show for me, man. And it was such a small show. I'm literally making bootleg shirts. I bought yellow ink and I'm making the exact same shirt I had when I was younger because I can't find one for sale anywhere. And I would pay a ridiculous amount of money to see that band live again. And somebody's going to pop up in the comments and go, oh, they're doing a reunion tour. I'm going to have to cough up that money, but I would do it. Any other bands you think of?
Shoot, man. Everyone I'm thinking of, I'm like, oh no, they're not together because this person passed away or this happened. So
yeah, the bass player for One Man Army he was the second one, but he was in the band. He passed, and I don't know if they played anymore after that.
Mm-hmm. Shoot, man. Now I feel like this is homework now. Now I need to come up with one for you for next week because this is driving me crazy. Because every time I'm going through my head, like, what about that? They tend to be people that have passed. Because so many people that got back together though too. That's the thing is how so many of these reunions also. Have like I would like to say like we were talking about Black Flag a minute ago. Like I would like to see Black Flag with
Henry Rollins
or with either one. I would just like to see that to see it.
A couple of years ago, it would have been the Misfits, but they actually came back.
Yeah, that's
arguing.
That's the other one.
Dude, like a year ago it would have been Blink.
Yeah. And that was the one a year ago. That was the default answer. Like when are they going to do a tour? You knew it was going to happen,
right? In a couple of years, it'll be No Effects.
Yeah, I'm pre-saving that answer for when you ask me.
This is a weird conversation, isn't it?
It's weird. It's also like shout out to punk rock for never dying because a lot of these bands are just kind of still going in some, a lot of these bands you can just go see if they're in town.
What's up with the edgelord types being like, man, punk's been dead since the 80s? Like, where do they think we've spent all of our time and money? It wasn't the 80s. Like,
I'll agree with them if they go on one point. Punk as the trend that it was in the late 70s as a piece of cultural fact, like punk as a cultural force, yes, died in like the late 70s.
Wait,
punk
what?
Absolutely.
Huh?
It was a cultural artsy fad that died out in the late 70s. That is, I don't think anyone can argue that.
I don't even understand that.
So think about it. So in the late 70s, punk is not this underground thing like we think of it now. Punk is the new thing. It just didn't catch like it got sucked up and changed into all these other things. But it's just like this thing that like 60 Minutes is covering and all this stuff. It's the in thing of the time. You go to if you wanted to be a cool person in the 70s, you go to New York and check out CBGB and see how the
I would definitely say that that's not the case then, because that's happened numerous times with the exact same thing all the way throughout the 80s and the 90s, because we had people like Gigi Allen who were getting that coverage in the late 80s, early 90s, like that. And then
it was never okay. So that was its one shot for punk to just be a thing in the collage of society. It didn't happen. Sid Vicious OD'd, all that stuff. Like it just kind of didn't happen. So punk went punk went underground in the 80s. Yes, punk still got attention. It still existed, but that's when punk music, in my opinion, really takes off. Yes, punk as not necessarily just fashion, but I mean as a fad, as a culture. Yes, that exists in that one time period. But then in the 80s, punk defines itself. Like punk is very small in the 80s, but all the way we talk about punk got formed in the 80s. All these little subgenres basically got sussed out, as we talked about last week a little bit, throughout the 80s. And then you get to the 90s, and now you have the second commercial music explosion of punk happens a few times in the 90s and in the 2000s. So I don't like punk is not dead because you and I talk about punk every freaking week. So obviously, and then it's not something that's in the past. It's obviously not something that's dead. But I think
because I've never understood somebody saying that.
The original sentiment of that, I think that's what that refers to. Now, is it dead as a genre? I mean, all music is dead. I could say music is dead. Like that is dead. but
because
not
I don't think that's what
necessarily
they're
punk.
talking about. When people say that, they're definitely not talking about what you just mentioned. They're talking about just what we do as a living, what we like, what we love, the shows we go to. And I've just never understood it because every time I've ever wanted to go see a punk rock show, within a few days, maybe a week or two at the most, there's one scheduled to be even in Houston, Texas, of all places. So I've never understood it. Dude, it's more.
If you want to say that,
well
then you
now.
could say it died in 2005. Like if it like for that other opinion, then maybe you could like that was the last time you. But that was the last time. What I'm saying is that's the last time you can be like a famous person and do punk rock. That was probably the last time you could necessarily.
I don't
that.
look at any of that as punk though. Like that's not what
no.
I'm
But
talking
what
about.
I'm saying is like if you want it to give credence to the argument, maybe you could say that is the type. Like that's if that's what it is. Now
I guess that's not what punk is though, and that's not it's one of these things where
punk may be dead, but it won't matter because punk is self-sustaining. So it really doesn't matter if it's
then
dead
that's
or
a
not.
silly thing to say because punk's not dead because punk exists. Like there's still shows. You can still make a sort of living. You can do as much of a living making punk as you can hardcore or even metal.
If you're going to say that, then just say music's dead. Like that is a true statement. Music is dead. I think you can say that. Like I'd be more comfortable actually saying that. Yeah. Music is not important in our culture as it was 10 or 20 years ago. No, not even close. No, I would. Yeah. You think kids that are 15, 16 years old don't care about music on the level that we cared about music in general?
Yeah.
No.
It's just different.
No, music is just a thing to them. It's part of their life. Music is not their lifestyle anymore.
No, bro.
I'm telling you.
Wait until your channel has 27,000 kids talking to you about.
I'm not saying there's not kids that don't do it. No, I'm saying it's not as important in the lives of kids.
I disagree wholly. It's just different. It's not the same.
They don't do the things. Musical artists if that was the case. These big companies like MTV would still feature music as a primary driver of what they do. They don't anymore. And that is because music as a whole is less important.
Companies aren't relevant. It has nothing to do with music being relevant. Because go look at stuff like TikTok and Instagram, and that's all you see is music stuff everywhere.
Okay,
because is
there an attachment to that music from the people?
Yes, that's my whole point. It's just different. It's not the way that we enjoyed it and the way that we lived on it, but they are still enjoying it and living on it the same amount that we did. It's just different. Now, I don't agree with how they're ingesting it. I don't agree on how it's being put out necessarily, but it is still just as important now as it was back then. I would even say more so. You have these dudes coming out that don't even have to tour, and they're getting billions of streams. That tells you that the music's still important.
But is the investment in the individual making the music that the people are attached to, or the music itself?
Do what?
Okay. When someone is into an artist these days, they are into the full artist. I will grant you that. They are into the artist as a whole now. Are they actually into that artist's music at the same level? I don't think so.
Because dude, I can't tell you, man. And honestly, I'm arguing for a fact that I wish I wasn't even arguing for. I wish it was more like what you're saying, because it drives me nuts that I've had literally hundreds. And this is just me. I don't even have like a big channel, dude. Imagine if I had like 1 million subs or 500,000, right? I've had hundreds of kids that tell me that all they do is listen to Juice WRLD all day long, every day, every day, every day, every day. They've got thousands of leaks. They spent $500 on a leaked song and this and that. And you're telling me that that's not as important to them as Rancid is to me? I may not agree with the music, but I would say that it is absolutely as important. It's wild, and I don't necessarily get it. I'm not cool. We're not young anymore. But like, it's just as important to these kids. And it is kind of crazy because they get it in whole different ways. I hate that they don't want to be putting out albums. They only want to put out singles. I think that's stupid, but it is what it is. I mean, I don't understand Drake, but these kids love this dude. I have a guy at work, okay? I was like, hey, shout out to Cameron, man. If he sees this, that's the homie, dude. I'm not talking any crap. I was like, Cameron, he's this like really good looking kid, man. He's like, but he's super cool. He's really nice. Honestly, when I first met him, I thought he wouldn't be super nice because he's that really good looking guy, right? But we really started becoming friendly, man. And he's like this nice kid, man. He's real young. He's like 20 years old, 21, something like that. I don't know. Sorry, Cameron, if you do end up seeing this. He went and spent like $500 on a ticket to see Drake. I'm sorry, dude. And he was like up there, him and like 4 kids from my job spent hundreds of dollars to go see this dude and knew every song, and we're coming back and telling me, oh dude, yeah, he was playing stuff from his earlier catalog and it was awesome, and he played this and this, and they knew all the songs. Bro, they probably knew more of the song names than I would know if I went and saw Rancid.
Do you think they could replicate that with like 5 other artists though? the way people like us did when we were kids.
Maybe not one of the guys, but a couple of them, yeah, because they really like Travis Scott like that. It's different kinds of music, but they invest time and money in this stuff, like honestly, to a surprising level. I don't think music's dead at all. I think it's just different. I don't think it's ever going back.
I think it's way less of a cultural force than it ever was. I think there's some musical artists that are still big, like major celebrities.
I just don't even understand how. I don't understand how you could say that. Like,
I don't think it doesn't order society
the
way.
Entire culture that is.
It doesn't, but it doesn't, and it doesn't order. But it doesn't order youth culture the way it used to.
What are you
talking?
That
is my main point.
Dude, you listen to hip hop at all?
No, I don't like hip hop.
Okay, then you have no idea what you're talking about, because I don't love hip hop. But I'm around a lot of it, and I listen to a lot of it. I don't love it like these kids do. But yes, dude, there is an entire like. But
kids listen to all the same stuff. That's part of my point too.
Dude, they don't. I've got a kid named Mike that comes into my store, right? His dad is a friend of mine, is also named Mike. So I got Junior comes into my store, right? This kid is like 14 years old, and this isn't some kind of small percentage of people. This is just one that I personally know that I talk to enough to where I can talk about him and it won't be weird. He comes into my store and he's bringing in stuff like, he's like 14, bro. And he just told me, hey, can you get me some Nas, dude? I'm really trying to get more and more into lyrical hip hop. Dude, this stuff is life changing. It consumes these kids. Just because it's not guitar driven music and you're not seeing it on platforms that you understand and it's not on the Warped Tour, doesn't exist no more. It doesn't matter, man. The music is no less important now than it was 50 years ago.
Every day, and they are not as interested in music as we were. Just flat out, they are not.
Bro,
music is not the cultural force that it was.
No, it's not. It's because you were part of a subculture. But back in the 90s, there weren't any more kids into music than there are now. I'm sorry, there just weren't. I knew hundreds and hundreds of kids that didn't give a single solitary shit about music other than, oh, I heard this on the radio. They liked Offspring. They liked Green Day. They liked Bush and Nirvana and Foo Fighters. But they like Sublime. But they didn't. None of them were into. What we're not talking about is punk rock dead anymore. We're talking about music. Those kids back then didn't care any more about music than the kids do now. They just didn't. That's just not the fact. So
I disagree.
Give me some reasons why you disagree. Then
because it doesn't. Because like I said, it doesn't order culture the same way. Like someone.
But I don't think it ordered culture back then.
Really, you didn't?
Not any more than it does now. There's just
feel
as much hip hop culture based solely on music.
Here's what I mean. Their identities were completely tied up in music back in the day, and it's just
and they still are.
It's a slice of these guys' identity. It's a slice along with all these other things. I don't see the all in with music with these kids the way we had it. I just don't see that at all, and I don't see it in every other part of society. I don't see it the way I used to see it.
I don't think that it was. My point isn't that it's more now. I'm saying that back then it wasn't as ingrained in stuff as you think that it was. We were just in a culture where music was everything. So you're not looking at it from an outside perspective. You're looking at it from inside, which you can't do that if you're talking about this. You have to look at it from outside, the overview. I'm not saying that you're wrong about kids not being just diehard music fans right now, but I am absolutely saying that when I was in high school, most kids didn't identify with stuff that had to do with music. They listened to the radio. They listened to whatever was on that they were told to listen to.
But even wasn't that a subgenre of kid though back then? And I don't think that exists
any more than it is now. It's the same.
There was the radio kid. There was like that was a mark of your identity that you didn't, buy records.
That's a ludicrous thing to say. That's silly. That's exactly the same as it is now. There's more kids now, so you're going to have a larger larger number of people that don't listen to music. But the percentage is likely the same. And if it's not the same, it is very close. Because back then, I can't tell you how many people back then I would ask, hey, want to go to a show? And they just simply didn't care. They didn't care about music. They were more into, maybe there was some stoner kids. They just kind of like this and that. They didn't have record collections. They didn't have CD collections. They didn't have shirts from bands. Dude, that was the 1% of the 1%, just like it is now. There's still very few kids that do all that stuff. Is my point. The youth isn't that much
fandom
different.
Is bigger. I think fandom is bigger. Yeah, like a fandom is bigger now.
Maybe, but that's solely based on the fact that we've got more people. But that's not my point.
No, but you can go more all in on someone now. Like think about it. Okay, so like this is a funny example, but at the NFL game this weekend, Taylor Swift shows up to the NFL game, and every media company had to tweet about it because you're going to get a bazillion clicks off of having her. So the people that are into her are all in, like they are to a level that like people in our generation, I don't even think we're into like their artists of that sort of deification level that
I don't think we had that back then.
I don't think we had that. So I think that exists now, but I'd be curious to know, like, well, what is the rate of kids that are actually into this stuff? Like, is it not by accident that these tours and stuff kind of like go out of business because people don't go to see music anymore? Like, isn't that part of why?
What tours are going out of business?
What tours are still in existence? Again, maybe I'm just talking about rock music and stuff, but like they all died out because people.
No, they didn't die out. They just changed.
Like now it's just like you have these big 4 or 5 ones, and that's it.
There's a fest every weekend now. There's like 100 fests now, dude. It got more than there used to be. There used to be Family Values, Ozfest, Warped Tour. That was it, dude. You got like 30 fests. I could probably pull up. I could Google right now, like music fests summer 2024 to see what's coming out next year. I don't know this, but I guarantee you it's.
But those are all events. That's my point. Those are all big events. None of them.
But that's what we had back then. It was just a little different.
Ozfest and Warped Tour are like these touring things too.
But it's the same thing, man. It's the same thing. We have different.
They can do it in every city versus the one event that you're building up. That's how all of entertainment's kind of sold like that now, right? It's the one thing you're building up to.
So they had them in different cities, right? But now they have them with much larger lists of bands. It's all the same thing. You either get the smaller list of bands that can tour around, or you have the one thing that you can travel to go see. It's all the same. It's all the same thing. So it's just a different. But music is not dead. That's crazy, man. Music as a whole is influencing people in honestly a much more extreme degree now than it was back. Maybe not more, but to the same degree at least. Because, dude, you got people like King Von, a literal murderer, who was like, I don't know. It's a whole other conversation, but yeah, music ain't dead, bro. That's crazy, man. It's crazy, dude. Now, the way you ingest it, the type of music, the popular stuff. We were looking at, because yeah, when we were young, music was our life. All right. I know kids like that now. A lot of them. You got to remember, man. You work in a school, and you have a lot of knowledge on it because of that. I work in a theater at a place where there's kids that have that same age, because I'm right across the street from 2 high schools, and I own a record store. So I have quite a bit of knowledge.
So then you're going to be overcalibrated to that, encountering that type of kid then at the place because of where you work, though, right?
Then you're undercalibrated. No, I'm not overcalibrated, because I don't have a lot of kid customers. I'm just saying, like, I have some knowledge on the subject. I do talk to young people. We both have YouTube channels. I guarantee you, on my other channel, my average viewer is probably like 17, maybe 16. Well, over here it's probably 35.
Yeah, look at the music you cover though too. Like, I'm not saying like it doesn't exist.
That's what I'm saying. So like the kids that age, it's just we have so many more people alive now that it does look kind of weird if you're looking at it from that vantage point. But no, man, the percentages are the same. Music just affects people the same ways it did back then. There's just as many people that are diehard music fans that it does affect their life. They do revolve their life around it. If that wasn't the case, record stores wouldn't even exist at all anymore. And just in Houston alone, there's like 7 of them. And that doesn't include the little places like mine. Record stores Walmart, Target carrying vinyl.
Yeah, the music business. That's the place to go into now. That's where it's profitable.
No, I'm just saying, like, that tells you something. If that stuff wasn't in demand, it wouldn't exist there. So if it wasn't in demand, it's because there's not enough people listening to it. It is in demand because people care. I've got people that come in now that are 17, 18, 19 years old that are wanting to learn about, hey, how do I take care of records? That's not because they're not invested in music. No, it is a way of life.
I just don't feel it at all in society the same that it used to be. Like, I don't.
Well, we are coming from different vantage points, so there is going to be that. Ultimately, this is something we have to reiterate every week, probably, but we're not actually arguing about this. We are friends, but like, it is, if somebody doesn't know us that just popped in for the first time, like, these guys, yeah. So I know you got to get out of here, but yeah, music I think is still deeply ingrained in our society. I do think that with having so much technology at our fingertips and having so many other places to go, it might feel like that. But man, I'm telling you, dude, none of the stuff that I do in my whole life would be able to be possible if it wasn't for the fact that music is still extremely relevant. Now, did it decrease by some small, minute amount? It might have. So I guess technically I could be wrong. But my point wasn't that it was a massive increase or any increase at all. Is that it's just still there. It's still relevant. It's not dead. It's different. It's so different, man. Like the music stuff now, so I don't really understand. I never thought I'd get to the point where I would say like I don't get it, but I don't. Like there's some popular acts that I enjoy, but by and large I don't.
Is it the music you don't get, or like
any of it, dude? I don't understand the kids, the clothes, the music, the nothing. I don't understand none of it, dude. Like NASCAR Allo, go listen to that shit.
The hip hop thing would trip me out because to me, hip hop is always about like dudes from East and West Coast murdering each other just because I grew up in the 90s. So I just assume that's like hip hop, and the wide range of hip hop that like people are like, oh, there's like the way like I will defend punk and rock, but like, oh, you can be into all kinds of different stuff and there's something for you. I didn't realize that also existed in hip hop.
Yeah,
that blows my mind. Like that blows my mind.
There's like the Nas stuff, the lyrical stuff. There's like, you know, trap music.
Mm-hmm.
There's drill music, which are almost the same, but honestly very different when you get into lyrics. You got backpack rap, you got party rap. You got, dude, there's like, I mean, at least 12 different rap subgenres, dude. It's what Southern rap's its own thing. Screw, you got all that down here. I mean, it's wild, bro. Like, and then, like, yeah, rap is a weird one, man. And you got the Sad Boy, little Peep Juice WRLD type stuff. I can keep going with rap. I wish I didn't know all that stuff, but I do.
That's your curse. That's your cross to bear.
Do you have any idea what we're doing next week?
I have no clue.
All right, keep just. I'll text you here in a little while. I'll think of something. Okay. I want to let you get out here and get going to your kids' game. Okay. We're trying to keep this keep you on schedule. So, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate everybody's time. If you don't mind, if you're still hanging about, like the video, comment on this jank, subscribe to the channel, go check out the Punk Odds where Rob's hanging out. We're slowly but surely melding this into one giant super punk rock
empire.
That's a good word for it too. Empire.
Strike first, like Bad Religion.
Let's go. All right, everybody. See y'all next time. Peace.